Artificial intelligence is changing far more than the speed of economic analysis. In this concluding episode of the Age of AI series, we explore how AI is reshaping the workflow of antitrust economists, from evaluating economic models and analyzing evidence to refining ideas through iterative learning. The discussion focuses on practical observations rather than predictions, explaining why human judgment remains central, even as AI expands analytical capability. This is EconWorks. Whether you're interested in competition law, economics, or artificial intelligence, this episode offers a practical perspective on how the profession is already evolving.
Imagine this for a moment. You're an economist, right? And you've just walked out of this high-stakes, incredibly tense meeting with a government competition authority.
Oh, man. Yeah, those meetings.
Right. The heavy wooden door clicks shut behind you. The air conditioning is like humming in the hallway, and your heart is probably still pounding. The formal discussion might be over, but the investigation, that is blown wide open.
Which is usually the exact moment the real panic sets in. Because, that meeting just threw a massive wrench into everything your team thought they knew about the case.
Exactly. New questions are just dropped on the table, like really complex, aggressive questions challenging the very foundation of the evidence you brought.
So let's rewind the clock to, say, 20 years ago.
Okay.
If you walked out of that room with those new questions ringing in your ears, exploring them, unpacking the massive data sets and reformulating a counter-argument, that would have taken days, maybe even weeks of grueling late-night spreadsheet analysis. Oh, absolutely. You'd essentially be rebuilding your economic model from the ground up every single time a new variable was introduced.
Just starting from scratch.
Pretty much. The computational friction of going backward to change a foundational assumption was astronomically high. It was a nightmare.
But today, you walk out of that exact same room, and artificial intelligence allows you to test those new ideas, challenge those fresh assumptions, and be fully prepped for the next round of negotiations within hours.
Within hours, yeah.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission is to explore a really fascinating intersection AI and antitrust economics. We're pulling insights from the finale of this great 5-part series by EconWorks.
It's a great series.
It really is. And it looks at how artificial intelligence is quietly but radically reshaping the workflow of competition authorities and economists.
Though, to set the baseline here, we really need to clarify what kind of AI integration we're actually talking about.
Right, good point.
Because we're not indulging in that classic sci-fi trope of a machine, taking the economist's job. This isn't about some autonomous software making legal rulings.
Like a robot judge.
Exactly. No robot judges. It is a deeply practical, on-the-ground shift happening right now in the industry. We're talking about a fundamental transformation in how these highly specialized professionals actually work.
Moving beyond just AI makes things faster.
Yes. It's moving into a reality where AI creates entirely new analytical capacities.
Okay, so let's unpack that shift. Because to grasp the magnitude of what AI is changing, we first need to understand the old workflow. Right? For a long time, antitrust investigations were entirely linear.
Very much a straight line. You started at point A, gathered your documents, you moved to point B, built your model, you moved to point C, presented your findings. It had to be sequential.
I think it helps to ground this in a specific example so we can really see the mechanics.
Let's do it.
Let's invent a massive, hypothetical corporate merger. Say, two of the world's biggest airlines, let's call them Sky Major and Global Air. They want to merge.
Okay, classic airline merger.
Right. Before they're allowed to combine, antitrust authorities have to investigate. And in the old linear model, an economist would spend months just on step one, which is gathering the data on flight routes, ticket prices, operating costs, all of it.
And by the time they finally moved to step 2, which is building an economic model to predict if ticket prices would go up, they were locked in.
Yeah.
If a competition authority suddenly asked, wait, what if we define the market differently? It was an absolute disaster.
Let's pause right there and define that term, because market definition is one of those pieces of antitrust jargon that sounds super simple, but it's actually the whole ballgame.
Oh, it absolutely is. When economists talk about market definition, they are arguing over the boundaries of competition.
So in our airline example...
Right. In the airline example, Sky Major and Global Air will argue their market includes budget airlines, trains, buses, maybe even high-speed rail.
Because they want it to seem like they have a ton of competition.
Exactly. They want the market defined as broadly as possible. Because if they're competing with trains and buses, Well, combining two airlines doesn't look like a monopoly.
Right. While the government, on the other hand, might define the market strictly as, say, business travelers taking nonstop flights between New York and London.
Which changes everything.
Yeah, in that narrow definition, combining these two specific airlines looks incredibly monopolistic.
And that tension over the boundaries. That is where the fight happens. And 20 years ago, if the government suddenly challenged your market definition like that, you had to manually recount the data, rerun the regressions, rebuild the model. It was a massive undertaking.
Which brings us to the core insight from the EconWorks series. We are witnessing the death of that linear investigation. AI enables economic analysis much earlier in the process.
Way earlier.
It takes those massive, messy piles of corporate business data. I mean, millions of ticket sales, internal emails, pricing algorithms, and turns them into structured, trustworthy evidence almost instantly.
Yeah, it's wild.
But the piece that really stood out to me is how it expands an economic team's analytical capacity without triggering Brooks' Law.
Brooks' Law. This is a crucial concept here. It comes from software development, actually.
Right.
And the adage states that adding manpower to a late software project just makes it later.
Because the cost of getting everyone up to speed outweighs the extra hands, like the coordination tax is too high.
Precisely. So if you're an economic consultancy and you suddenly need to test 50 new market definitions by Monday morning, throwing 10 new PhD economists onto the team on Friday night is a nightmare.
You'd just be explaining things the whole time.
Exactly. You spend all your time coordinating, explaining the data structure, managing versions of spreadsheets. But AI gives you the equivalent of those 10 extra PhDs, the pure brain power and processing capability without that coordination tax.
Which completely changes the shape of the workflow.
Yeah.
We go from that straight linear line we talked about to this continuous iterative loop.
Yes, the loop.
It starts with evidence collection, flows into applying economic theory, moves to discussing those findings with the opposing side, which inevitably generates new questions.
Always.
Which then triggers a revised analysis, which loops right back to gathering more specific evidence. It just becomes a continuous engine.
And this iterative process has always been the holy grail of competition analysis. I mean, economic theories in these massive mergers are never static. They evolve as the evidence comes into focus.
It was just too slow before.
Exactly. The difference is that artificial intelligence finally accelerates this loop to a usable speed. You don't wait weeks to explore what happens if high-speed rail is included in the market definition. You model that diverging possibility in a single afternoon.
Okay, let's unpack this. It sounds like antitrust analysis is shifting from like a turn-based board game to a real-time strategy game.
That's a great way to put it.
Like in chess, you make a move, you sit back, you wait days to see the result of your opponent's move, and then you slowly calculate your next step. Now it's real time. Everything is happening all at once, the map is constantly updating, and you're reacting and strategizing simultaneously.
Right. That latency between having a complex economic question and seeing the modeled outcome of that question has essentially collapsed.
But I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
If we collapse that latency, does doing everything so much faster just mean these economists are making mistakes at warp speed? Like if you're churning through airline market definitions in 3 hours instead of 3 weeks, aren't you just increasing the volume of potential errors in the data?
Well, I can see why it looks that way from the outside, but that assumes the speed is being used to rush to a final, definitive conclusion.
Which it isn't.
It isn't. The speed is being used to test a much wider variety of assumptions. Think about it this way. If you connect this to the bigger picture, if you only have the time and budget to test one economic model, you are praying that model is flawless.
Right, because all your eggs are in one basket.
Exactly. But if you have the capacity to test 50 alternative scenarios in an afternoon, you're mapping the entire landscape of possibilities.
You're actively hunting for the mistakes before they become a problem.
You're exposing the weaknesses in your own arguments before the other side ever gets a chance to point them out. You're learning faster, not just executing faster.
Okay, so if you have 50 alternative scenarios mapped out, and you know all the weak points in your own armor, what happens when you actually sit down across the table from the opposing lawyers?
That's when things get interesting.
How does all that rapid-fire data survive a high-stakes shouting match? Which brings us to the meetings themselves. These happen long before anyone ever sets foot in a courtroom.
Yeah, the investigation phase is where the parameters of the battlefield are drawn. Now, ostensibly, These early discussions between the competition authorities and the merging parties are meant for persuasion.
Sure, Sky Major and Global Air want to persuade the government that their merger won't hurt consumers.
And the government wants to express their concerns about competitive effects, meaning, will this merger cause ticket prices to skyrocket?
Right, but the true hidden value of these meetings isn't actually persuasion, is it? It's learning.
Both sides are feeling each other out. You learn about the other side's evidence, their economic reasoning, but more importantly, the aggressive questions raised by the opposition frequently expose vulnerabilities you didn't realize you had.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they highlight assumptions you took for granted. The conversation itself is a vital piece of the analytical process.
And this is where AI enters the NIAC, quite literally the moment the meeting ends. The concept from the EconWorks piece is called AI-assisted reflection, and it is fascinating.
It really is.
The meeting finishes, you go back to your desk, and instead of just typing up minutes, you use AI to immediately explore the alternative interpretations that the government regulators just yelled at you about.
It acts as an incredibly rigorous sounding board. You feed the AI the transcript or the core arguments presented by the competition authority, and you ask it to stress test your existing models against those specific concerns.
It's like having an elite sparring partner waiting in the locker room right after the first round of a boxing match.
Oh, I like that.
You walk back, bleeding a little bit from a hit you didn't see coming, and your sparring partner perfectly replicates the exact combination your opponent just used, forcing you to figure out how to block it before the bell rings for round 2.
And crucially, that AI sparring partner isn't deciding if you won or lost the first round. It's simply showing you where your guard was down.
Right.
If the government regulator asked, well, what happens to prices on the New York to London route if budget airlines go bankrupt? The AI can immediately simulate that specific edge case. It helps economists ask fundamentally better questions before they step back into the ring.
Okay, let's talk about the reality of what actually goes down in that ring. Set the scene for me. When billions of dollars are on the line in one of these rooms, who is actually sitting at the massive oak table? And what are their hidden agendas?
It's a packed room.
Because it is rarely just a calm exchange of pure objective data, right?
No, never. It is an incredibly complex dynamic. On one side of the table, you have the corporate executives, the CEOs of Sky Major and Global Air. Their sole job in that moment is to pitch the transaction as a massive benefit to customers.
Make it sound like a win-win.
Exactly. Then you have the competition authorities, who are structurally mandated to be skeptical and to flag risks.
Right.
You have the economists, who are desperately trying to keep the conversation grounded in empirical data. And finally, you have the high-priced corporate lawyers, whose entire profession is built on fierce, persuasive advocacy for their clients.
So you take all those people, put them in a room with a potential monopoly on the line, and you get a very messy cocktail. A mix of genuinely useful empirical information and pure, unadulterated advocacy.
A very noisy room.
Yeah. And as an economist, your job is to somehow sift through that incredibly polished rhetoric and find the actual economic signal, which leads to what I like to call the AI bullshit detector.
That's a good name for it, because that sifting process is notoriously difficult for a human brain to do in real time. Humans are deeply susceptible to persuasive rhetoric.
We really are.
We like a good narrative. We're naturally swayed by a confident lawyer in an expensive suit delivering a compelling emotional argument about saving jobs. AI's role as an independent analytical perspective becomes invaluable here, precisely because it doesn't care about the lawyer's tone of voice.
It's immune to the charm.
Exactly. Its job is to strictly evaluate the underlying logic.
Give me an example of what that looks like in practice. How does an AI catch a flawed argument that a human might completely miss in the heat of the moment?
Okay, let's go back to our airline merger. Imagine the lead lawyer for Sky Major leans across the table and confidently declares, this merger will absolutely lower ticket prices for consumers because we will achieve massive supply chain efficiencies by combining our aircraft maintenance divisions.
Okay. A human economist might hear that, nod along, and write down supply chain efficiencies as a point to investigate later.
Exactly. It sounds totally plausible. It's a standard business argument.
Yeah, companies merge to save money on operations all the time.
They do. But when you feed that transcript to an AI and prompt it to map the logic and identify unstated assumptions, the AI doesn't nod along.
What does it do?
It flags that statement and essentially says, warning, this claim assumes that supplier contracts for aircraft parts won't be aggressively renegotiated upward by vendors post-merger. Ask them for proof of fixed-rate long-term maintenance contracts.
Oh, wow. So it takes this smooth, polished piece of corporate rhetoric and turns it into a trap the economists can spring in the very next meeting.
Yes. It turns rhetoric into a literal checklist of economically relevant vulnerabilities and points out where the empirical evidence is lacking or where a massive assumption is hiding quietly behind a very slick presentation.
I have to jump in here with a major caveat, though.
Sure.
Isn't AI notorious for being easily swayed by persuasive prompts? Like, we've all seen the examples of chatbots being talked into hallucinating facts or just adopting the bias of the user.
Oh, absolutely.
So if I'm an economist working for the airlines and I feed the AI a transcript, wanted to tell me what I want to hear, how can we trust it to filter out legal rhetoric without just hallucinating its own bias?
That is the exact reason why the way these tools are deployed is so critical. Professional economists are not typing into a prompt box, hey, who is right in this meeting? Or is this airline merger a good idea?
Right.
If you ask it to be a judge, you will get a hallucination. You will get a reflection of your own bias.
Because it's just a language model trying to predict the most pleasing answer.
Exactly. Instead, they use AI strictly as a logic mapper. The prompts are highly specific and constrained. They ask what mathematical assumptions must be true for this lawyer's claim to hold up in a standard pricing model.
I see.
The AI isn't deciding correctness, right? It's flagging unsupported leaps in logic. By stripping the emotion and the sales pitch away, it leaves you with just the raw mechanics of the argument.
I can see how that changes the whole dynamic of an investigation. But it leads us to the ultimate paradox of this entire evolution.
That is.
Well, if AI is doing the high-level filtering, mapping the logic, building the data models, testing 50 edge case assumptions in an afternoon, and acting as this tireless, brilliant sparring partner, what exactly is left for the human economist to do?
It's the existential question of our era for knowledge workers, isn't it?
Definitely.
But when you look closely at the workflow, there is a very clear division of labor between what the machine provides and what the human must provide.
Okay, break that down.
The AI provides incredible speed, the scale to process millions of emails and ticket sales, the exploration to test every wild edge case, and the consistency to apply those methods without needing a coffee joke at 2 a.m.
The machine provides the horsepower.
Yes.
But how does that elevate the human role?
Because the machine doesn't know what matters. Let's say the AI analyzes our airline merger and generates 100 brilliant, logically sound questions about potential vulnerabilities. The human economist has to provide the judgment to look at that list and say, okay, these 95 questions are technically interesting, but they are completely irrelevant to the specific concerns of the judge overseeing this case. These 5 questions, however, are the ones that will win or lose the merger.
That makes total sense. The AI expands the realm of analytical possibilities to an unprecedented scale, but the human still has to filter those possibilities through the reality of the market.
Exactly. The human provides interpretation, weighing competing theories against real-world context that the AI just doesn't possess.
Right.
The human provides communication, taking these massively complex mathematical findings and translating them into a compelling narrative for a CEO or a government official. And most importantly, the human provides decision-making.
The liability factor.
Exactly. At the end of the day, a human has to sign their name to the document. A human has to take professional, ethical, and legal responsibility for the conclusions and the advice given. An AI cannot be held liable if the economic model turns out to be disastrously wrong.
I'll take it a step further, because here's where it gets really interesting to me. The beautiful irony of this whole shift is that humanity has spent decades trying to build the ultimate answer machine.
We really have.
We wanted a supercomputer that we could just plug the airline data into, ask, will this merger raise prices? And it would spit out a definitive, mathematically perfect yes or no.
Right.
But AI's greatest contribution to the field of antitrust economics isn't that it produces answers. It's that it produces questions.
What's fascinating here is that this echoes the introduction of almost every major technological leap in the history of economics.
Really?
Yeah. When complex statistical software and econometric simulation models were introduced in the 1980s, people panicked. They thought the software would replace the economist entirely.
But they were just tools.
Exactly. They didn't replace the job, they changed the nature of the inquiry.
They allowed people to ask bigger, harder questions.
AI does exactly the same thing, just on a scale we haven't seen before. It provides the capacity to explore the unknown, but the value of that exploration depends entirely on how thoughtfully the human directs the machine.
Right.
You're no longer the person manually crunching the numbers in a spreadsheet. You're the architect of the inquiry. You're the one driving that continuous learning loop.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? Whether you're an economist prepping for a multi-billion-dollar corporate merger, a manager trying to understand a new market, or just someone navigating a daily life filled with information overload and persuasive rhetoric. The underlying lesson here is incredibly profound.
It really is.
We are moving rapidly into a world where the heavy lifting of gathering data, filtering out the noise, mapping the logic, and testing 100 different scenarios can be completely offloaded to a machine. You can leverage this technology to radically expand your possibilities.
Yeah.
You can use it as a sparring partner to prepare for any argument, turning smooth rhetoric into a checklist of vulnerabilities.
But you cannot outsource your judgment.
Exactly. You still have to be the one to look at the board, interpret the reality, and decide what actually matters. AI has completely rewired the workflow from a slow, linear slog into this dynamic, rapid cycle of learning. It strips away the posturing to help you find the actual truth. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Something that builds on this new reality, but takes it just one step further into the future.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Think back to that tense meeting room we started with. The economist walking out, heart-pounding, ready to use AI to rebuild their arguments and hunt for flaws in hours instead of weeks. We know they're using AI to get exponentially faster and better.
Yeah,
But remember, the other side has AI too.
that's the catch.
If artificial intelligence makes everyone in the room, the government authorities, the high-priced corporate lawyers, the merging corporations, exponentially faster and better at finding the fatal flaws in each other's arguments, what happens next?
It's an arms race.
Will future corporate mergers result in endlessly complex, unwinnable stalemates, where AI-powered legal teams counter every single point perfectly, forever? Or will this AI arms race force companies to only propose fundamentally flawless pro-consumer mergers from the very start, simply because they know any hidden flaw, any unstated assumption will be instantly detected by the machine across the table?
That is the million-dollar question.
It's a brand new world, and the rules of the game are changing by the hour. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the assumptions in your own world, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Econ Works. The goal of this series is to move beyond the surface-level descriptions of how markets work and start looking at the actual architecture of competition. We'll be back soon with another look at where the law and economics meet the market. For the full technical analysis and more from this series, visit us at econworks.com. If you found today's breakdown valuable, please subscribe and share the show. It helps us keep the analysis independent. From all of us here at Econ Works, thanks for listening.